People ask me all the time how I'm able to live and travel in so many different countries without a visa. After all, in a lot of countries, you'll need to apply for a visa months and sometimes years in advance. And my answer to that is that unless I have a reason to try to stay in a country long term without any breaks, I'm not applying for visas. Because with my US passport, I get visa-free access to a lot of countries as a tourist. And depending on the country, it might only be 30 days at a time or 90 days or 6 months and sometimes even a year or longer. Now, a lot of countries allow you to apply for a visa so that you can live in them much longer than what your tourist visa will allow. For example, both India and Nepal allow you to live there for about a year or longer if you apply for a visa and you pay a fee. Countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand have a lot of long-term visa options also. Apparently, you can live in the Philippines for 3 years at a time, nonstop. So even if you can't become a citizen of their country, it's worth it to live there for a lot of Americans because as a US citizen, they'll pretty much let you stay there indefinitely as long as you keep applying and paying for visas. And then there's a ton of countries that offer 90-day tourist visas for US citizens. For example, off the top of my head, Colombia, Ecuador, Argentina, most European countries, and many countries all over Africa and Asia. So that's already a good chunk of 3 months at a time, which is already around when a lot of people start to get bored from living in one place. So you can theoretically live in a new country every 3 months as a tourist and not have to get stuck in their tax net or ever have to pay extra fees or file paperwork just to be there, which is an incredible privilege to have. But now I just want to focus on places where you can literally buy a ticket to as a US citizen and feel rest assured that you won't have to apply for a visa or leave the country for at least 1 year or longer. A lot of people don't want to have to get up and move every 3 months, and they don't want to have to file an application to live in a new country because it means a legal hassle back in the States. Let's say you have a criminal record or you work for the government. Many of us would rather just fly under the radar. So there are 6 countries where you can stay in visa-free for 1 year or longer, and you get all the tax benefits of living in a different country. So let's start with Svalbard, Norway, since Svalbard is a place where anybody in the world can go to live in and work in indefinitely without a visa, and you can pay 0 taxes in Svalbard. That's right, you get to move to Svalbard, Norway, and pay 0 taxes no matter where in the world you're from. Anybody who's saying that they come from a country where they're not allowed to go anywhere or work anywhere, well, you can go to Svalbard because in 1920, there was a treaty granting equal rights to basically the entire world to go and live and work there. It's very safe in Svalbard. Crime is almost non-existent. There are great work and educational opportunities for anybody in Svalbard that wants it, and the nature is beautiful, and everybody speaks English, so you don't have to learn Norwegian. Just make sure that you have enough money to live there because Svalbard is really expensive. Just looking through Airbnb at the home prices, wow, you'll need the income. Also, you'll have to abide by the Norwegian laws and regulations since there are a lot of them. Although I did hear from TikTok that Norwegian jail is pretty luxurious and a lot of people would actually rather go to jail in Norway than have to pay the extra rent.
Until your court date, this is gonna be your state, aka the jail. Hey man, I didn't do it, bro. I didn't do that. Follow me. I didn't do it. This jail right here? Yes, this is jail. What do you mean? Since when was there a fountain in a jail? There's always been fountains in jail. But wait, weren't you saying you weren't the one that did it? Oh no, yeah, I did it. Yeah, I did it. Yeah. I was just joking around, you know what I'm saying, seeing where y'all minds was at. Shout out to that police officer.
Also, Norway is cold and dark, and for a lot of us that could mean seasonal depression all year round, so it might pay to be a criminal rather than be homeless in Norway. A few fun facts about Svalbard. Svalbard is home to the Global Seed Vault, which is an underground facility that stores seeds from all around the world as a backup in case of global catastrophes. The polar bear population in Svalbard is roughly equal to the human population, making Svalbard one of the few places where polar bears can be frequently seen. Also, Svalbard has a unique tax system with no direct taxes. Instead, as part of your flight cost to Svalbard, you'll have to pay a one-time Svalbard environmental fee of 150 Norwegian krone, which is equal to about $14.32 US cents. Despite being an island in the Arctic, Svalbard boasts a diverse population from over 50 countries. And interestingly, dying is technically not allowed in Svalbard due to the permafrost preserving bodies, which can be problematic with diseases. There's also a local law requiring residents to carry firearms outside of settlements because of the polar bear risk. So in addition to not paying taxes in Svalbard, firearms are mandatory. A libertarian's dream. Next, let's look at the Pacific islands of Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and Palau, which I thought were all part of the United States, but apparently it still counts under the physical presence test as a foreign country in the case that you want to write off some taxes. As a US citizen, you're allowed to live in Micronesia, Marshall Islands, and Palau indefinitely. Everybody else has to apply for a visa if they want to stay longer than 30 to 60 days, but you can live there forever if you want to as an American. And depending on what you're doing in those countries, you might be able to pay very little or no taxes. They're not exactly considered tax havens, but they could save you a lot on taxes depending on which island you're on and how you're making your money. The downsides to living in any of these islands is the climate instability. They get a lot of tropical weather plus earthquakes, tsunamis, and typhoons. They also don't have the best infrastructure and healthcare in all of the islands, but because they're such remote islands, the cost of living is still very high in all of these countries. I can't imagine wanting to pay this much to live anywhere, let alone in the middle of nowhere, unless I have a specific passion or I'm just making a ton of money from building out there. The slow pace of life seems like a plus though, but I imagine there are some opportunities for passion and building, especially if you love the ocean. If you're super into marine biology and conservation, these islands are surrounded by one of the largest marine protected areas in the world. You have excellent diving and fishing, endless patches of unexplored beautiful wildlife, great surfing and boat clubs. If you're a doctor or developer and you want to set up shop in one of these islands, your work will be in high demand and you might be able to charge a lot. You'll also be surrounded by many different, very rich cultures that haven't been explored for many years because of how remote they are. A few fun facts about these island countries. Each country offers its unique landscapes and ecosystems and marine life. For example, Palau is known worldwide for its exceptional diving sites, including famous spots like Jellyfish Lake and the Rock Islands. Despite modern influences, there's a strong emphasis on preserving traditional ways of life, language, and customs. The US dollar is the most widely used currency in these countries. Expats from the US are often attracted to the community-oriented and slower-paced life in these countries, which is a break from the hustle and bustle of life in the US. But maybe you don't want to live in the middle of nowhere just to get away from the US. You might want to live in a legit country with its own infrastructure and be able to stay there for an entire year. And you can do that in the country of Georgia. Georgia offers 1 year visa-free to US citizens. It's located right between Eastern Europe and West Asia on the Black Sea, between the countries of Russia, Turkey, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, and is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. There is a huge and fast growing expat economy in Tbilisi. The cost of living is very low compared to most Western countries, and from what I hear, people love living in Georgia, the country. The food is good, the people are friendly, and even more so if you're a Westerner, and the nature and hiking are supposedly very beautiful. Also, from what I hear, Georgia is a really good place for Americans who still meet the requirements to open a bank account, since the Georgian lari is doing really well, and they're also business friendly for those who eventually want to incorporate in Georgia, but don't want to pay a lot of taxes or fees. The downsides to living in Georgia for me are that it's cold in Georgia and I like warm weather. Also, Georgians speak their own language, but for a lot of people, these things aren't a big deal. Like if you're coming from a northern country, it might actually be warmer than your country. Also, it might be fun to learn Georgian, and from what I hear, Tbilisi is filled with English speakers. A few fun facts about Georgia. Georgia is one of the oldest wine-producing countries in the world, with a rich tradition of winemaking that attracts wine lovers from all over the world. Georgian cuisine is very famous. You have dishes like khachapuri and khinkali, which I don't know if I'm saying it right. Very famous dishes there. Another thing is Georgia's location between Europe and Asia make it an awesome base for exploring other countries. Georgia's government has been proactive in attracting foreign investment and entrepreneurs, so they offer a lot of incentives and a business-friendly environment. And finally, Georgia is considered a really safe country with low crime rates, particularly in violence. Finally, let's talk about Albania, which is much warmer than Georgia and is located right on the Mediterranean between Greece and Montenegro. You can actually live on the Mediterranean in Albania for a whole year without resetting your visa. And when you do decide to reset it, you can literally hop on a boat and spend a day in Greece and head right back to Albania for another year at a time. And the cool thing about Albania is that it's supposedly even cheaper to live in than it is in Georgia, which is already cheap compared to the US. People are friendly there. Corporate taxes are relatively low, from what I hear, at a maximum of 10%. If you have a business, there are a lot of well-educated and qualified people willing to work for you for very little. And there is infrastructure growth happening in Albania, which means more opportunity for a lot of businesses. Also, the government of Albania has has really been pushing for the ability to join the European Union, which would give the people of Albania even more opportunities like travel. And now a few fun facts about Albania. Albania is increasingly being recognized as a tourist destination, which is gradually leading to even better infrastructure and services there. Albanian cuisine is influenced by Turkish, Greek, and Italian cooking. The country is home to numerous national parks and protected areas. And because of its history, Albania has a diverse cultural makeup, including influences from its Ottoman past and neighboring countries. The growing interest in Albania as a destination has actually led to increased opportunities in real estate, both for personal use and investment purposes. Finally, even though it's not on our list, I want to talk about the Bahamas, which doesn't offer a year, but it does offer up to 240 days visa-free for US citizens. The Bahamas is an archipelago of about 700 islands and over 2,000 Ks in the Atlantic Ocean, which offer all kinds of tax and investment advantages for US citizens, including very stable banking, no income tax, no corporate tax, no capital gains tax, or wealth tax. It's relatively close to the US, and if you're willing to stick around, the government there offers all kinds of incentives for investment in tourism, banking, agriculture, and fisheries, mostly in tax exemptions. It's a very stable political climate, it's got beautiful weather, and if you're willing to start a business there eventually, you'll get a ton of tourist money, particularly from the US. The main downside that I can think of with the Bahamas is a really high cost of living, lack of infrastructure in a lot of the smaller islands, and hurricanes. But I enjoyed the Bahamas when I was there, and it was actually very pretty and very clean, and it felt very safe. If you're willing to reset your visa every 6 months, there are several countries that allow you to literally live there as long as you leave and come back twice a year, every 6 months. So those include Panama, Mexico, Peru, the UK, Antigua and Barbuda, Armenia, Barbados, Canada, Cayman Islands, and Dominica. I'm living in Mexico at the moment, and I know a lot of these countries are well-known tax havens, such as the Cayman Islands, and as long as you don't break the law or overstay your visa, most of these countries won't give you trouble for border hopping every 6 months, unless you show that you don't have any plans to ever settle down or make money long-term. They don't want you to be stuck there. So at customs, just try not to look like a smelly backpacker, and you should really not have any issues. A lot of Americans are coming to Mexico just to be on drugs and wig out indefinitely. And because of that stereotype, I've actually been hearing stories lately of Americans being questioned at Mexican customs. So that's the rundown of all the countries that you can live in as a US citizen with no visa application, no government bureaucracy, and just a passport in hand, and proof that you don't plan on breaking any laws, including overstaying your visa. If you're looking for some guidance on how to become financially free to live in another country because even basic survival for you has been a challenge lately, I'd highly recommend that you check out my book, House Hackers Anonymous. It's a 12-step survival program for my younger self, and you'll find the link to that and other goodies in the description below. I really hope that it helps you, and at the very least, it inspires you in your freedom journey. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.